Hi, everyone. Welcome to this afternoon's webinar on appreciating and recognizing staff. My name is Kiara Frechette. I'm the Nonprofit Programs Director here at Spur Local. I'm going to give people one more minute or so to log in, and then we will get started. If you have any questions today throughout the webinar, feel free to ask them via the questions tab. What that looks like is a little chat icon with a question mark inside of it. You can click that, submit a question, and I'll be sure that we answer that. So if you have a question now that you came today hoping to have answered, you're welcome to submit a question at any point, even now, and I'm happy to answer that and make sure that I incorporate that into today's presentation. We will be recording today's webinar as well as sending out the slides following in our evaluation email, so you can look forward to that. Again, I'm going to give people about 30 more seconds to log in, and then we will get started. All right, we're going to jump right into things. Again, welcome to anyone who just joined us. My name is Kiara Frechette. I'm the Nonprofit Programs Director. Today we're going to be talking about appreciating and recognizing staff, everything from kind of making the case for appreciation, thinking about creating individual touch points to appreciate our staff members, and really making sure that it's a part of our staff culture, that it's a part of our organizational culture, that we are thankful and we express gratitude, really ultimately increasing, people's satisfaction at work, increasing our effectiveness as teams. If we're happier, we work better together. And that also, as we're thinking about it, we're strengthening the sector, we're strengthening, retention at our organizations. If people are happy, if they're feeling satisfied, that their work is being recognized, they're going to stay longer. And that's ultimately helpful for our organizations to continue on. So that is everything we are diving into. As I mentioned, when people are just joining, if you have questions, feel free to submit them at any point, even now, via the question box. Looks like a question mark inside of a chat icon. And we will be sending out the slides and the recording following today's session. So with that, we'll go ahead and dive right in. So the first thing that I want to talk about is ultimately when we're talking about appreciating and recognizing our staff, we're talking about recognizing their engagement, recognizing the work that they're doing. And before we get into things, really kind of, again, making the case for spending some time, spending an afternoon thinking about appreciation and thinking about it past just a simple thank you, is thinking about what does that mean for our organization? How does this help our organization? So Spur Local, we've conducted a burnout survey focused on ED wellness and staff wellness since 2021. So we've done this for the last three years. Our surveys just went out this week today for EDs to get a fourth year of data. What we find in that is that, and what we found is that majority of teams burned out in 2021, which is the first year that we did the survey. That majority of the folks surveyed, we get just around 170 responses each time, that in 2021, the majority of teams, so more than 50%, felt burned out. What we've seen since 2021 is that number goes lower and lower each year since. And so as we've been thinking about that, I should say since, not since, but since we're really thinking about that's a great thing to see for the sector, and it's also something that isn't just happening without intentionality behind it. So spending some time towards motivating your staff, towards thinking about how you can recognize the work they're doing, what options are available to us. Maybe if you're here just to get some creative ideas, I will provide a couple as we go out throughout today. But really, we need to put in time to be able to lower that sense of burnout. When staff are burned out, it's harder for us to adapt to challenges and uncertainty, which we know there is plenty of. When teams are burned out, it's harder to get collaboration. People don't feel that engagement and excitement for the work, and especially for mission-driven work like our organizations, it's important that we bring what we can to that, that we're able to show up in a way that's helpful for our clients and partners. The way we also see it too is I mentioned right at the beginning here when we were thinking about this, is that overall, the nonprofit kind of voluntary turnover rate is a little bit higher than all industry average of 12%. So we're looking at 19% there. And so that's a little bit higher, not drastically higher than the national average. But we know the type of work, the work that we're doing at our nonprofits involves kind of emotional investment a lot of times, that we really care. We can see that direct impact. And so if we're having that turnover rate too, kind of putting those two together, thinking about that we want to, decrease that turnover rate. We want people staying in our nonprofits because they feel appreciated, that they're not feeling burned out by, the amount that we're asking of them, not only kind of in terms of time, but, emotional connection to the work. It's important, again, appreciation. I'm not going to say that that's the end all be all, but it's one step and kind of one thing we can integrate into our cultures as an organization, to kind of increase that level, making sure people feel valued. At the core, appreciation is feeling that value, and that others recognize the work that you're putting in towards a mission. And then finally, staff care about the missions of our work. That's one thing that's unique about the nonprofit sector compared to other sectors. And we know that an uncertainty is certain. And if there's a lot of uncertainty and you care about the work, it's a lot of mental energy to be focused towards the work and towards what we're doing here. So as we're thinking about this, and we know that there's going to be uncertainties, as there are with every year with new administration, just thinking about this, creating that sense of value and recognition in your work culture, in your individual relationships, will increase that feeling of connectedness. And so we're looking to also create opportunities to connect with other staff, and looking at, as we think about appreciation, we're thinking about that way of recognition that it's not just you as a manager or you as an executive director connecting with staff, but how are we connecting staff with others? How are we creating a connected community that when we face those uncertain times, we feel like we're able to tackle it together, that we can collaborate to figure it out. And it's not just us on our own trying to figure it out as a sole person. We're really working on it as an organization. So again, this is just the context setting side of things, but I like to mention this just to share a little bit of data and kind of what we're working for when we're thinking about recognition and we're thinking about appreciation. We're really thinking about improving our work culture, improving the sector, and creating a place where people want to work and invest their time in, where they know they're going to be putting in work, and they're going to be able to see impacts, and that they'll be able to work with a team that appreciates them. So the first tip we have here that I want to dive into is really around understanding motivation. So this is specific to a one-on-one relationship you have, with a direct report, or somebody else, maybe a volunteer, someone you're working with. And this is really just to understand their motivation for the work. The tips I'm sharing today really are at their core, focused on understanding your staff members and putting time into making recognition and gratitude a part of the relationship. So as you're thinking about this, there's kind of three main ways that we see generally that most staff are motivated and kind of the reasons for the work. One is impact. So thinking about staff member that is driven by that impact, driven by the direct impact that they have, taking some time to show staff the difference they're making every day through their work. So thinking about how can we be recognizing them in terms of something that we know motivates them. If you have a staff member who's always telling you, here's what this person came to me with this testimonial, I'm so excited by it. They might be someone who's driven by impact. So then thinking about what are some other ways that you can connect that impact to, your thanks with them. As you think about it, performance. So their staff who are really driven by the goals they set and what they're able to achieve, the metrics that they're hitting. That's one thing to be thinking about, making sure that they're in your recognition plan, you're letting staff see their progress, showing them the quality of their skills. Are there opportunities maybe for them to demonstrate these skills? Speak at a conference, speak on behalf of the organization. Is there space for your staff to, how can you celebrate, the milestones and metrics that they're hitting in an all staff newsletter or, that goes to the board as well. So thinking about the performance space. And then finally, if you feel like, as you get to know your team members, as you think about the ways that they are motivated, another way that we see people being motivated is by collaboration and by their team. They're excited for what they can achieve with others. They work well in that team setting. They work well in collaboration. They're bringing something different to the table, and they care about really supporting the others on their team. Maybe this, we don't always see this, but sometimes with more junior staff, we see that they're motivated by what the team accomplishes because they're still getting to learn the organization. We also see people who are in, operations roles at our organizations being folks who are really driven by the team support side of things. And if that's the case, you're maybe in your plan to create recognition, you're thinking about how can you motivate that person and kind of recognize them by making it clear to staff how they're impacting those around them on the team. So maybe this is during your performance review process, which I will talk about later and get into a little bit more detail. But maybe during that performance review process, you're getting staff feedback on that specific person's performance, and you're sharing it with that team member to demonstrate gratitude and that team support they have. So these are just 3 of the ways that we see people being motivated and some kind of initial ideas for how we can motivate and how we can thank and recognize people in these areas. But what I would encourage you to do is, as you think about kind of post-webinar, just consider the different direct reports you have, the people you're working with, whether those are volunteers or staff members or part-time folks, and thinking about how are they motivated? What if they told you when they're really excited? What makes them, excited, right, about the work? And thinking about from those different areas, are there ways that you could recognize them in ways that they like to be motivated? Again, if there's someone who's driven by impact, you're sharing some impact stats. Performance, you're sharing the metrics. Team, you're thinking about how can you integrate the team into the gratitude side of things. So trying to meet people where they are in that way. Similar to tip number 1 is tip number 2, which is being authentic in your approaches. And so this is a little bit more tactical of a slide, but this is thinking about, you want to adjust your appreciation based on the needs or motivation of a staff member. So as we're thinking about this, I'll go through a couple here, and then we'll go into kind of building out a plan for appreciation. So first here is just, if you're thinking about, okay, I came here to learn some ways to recognize people outside of thanking them. The first is just thanking people one-on-one. This is probably what you're already doing, but just thinking about finding a channel to thank them directly. Is it email, phone number? Is it on social media? But just one-on-one, you are sharing out, you're talking to this person and thanking them. And this could be a well-recognized volunteer. This could be a staff member. They have a huge project they're working on annually. Maybe it's an event they help to put on, or a process or a program. Once it closes, sending that thank you to them. Yes, it's part of their job. They know it's part of their job, but taking a minute just to thank them one-on-one can go a long way. Another way to do this is thinking about events. So this could be for all of your staff, and this is one of the ones that kind of extrapolates past just kind of that one-on-one relationship, but could be planning an appreciation event for staff, or maybe you're thanking them at an upcoming event. Do you have slides for the event? Is one of the slides highlighting your staff members who made it possible? Is there a board meeting where your staff members are going to be at, or any interaction that your board members are at, or any interaction your board and staff are having together? Thinking about what events, where can you thank people outside of that one-on-one so that others know that you're thankful for them and kind of are seeing that. Another piece here, of course, is what we think of when we think okay, I'm thanking them. What else can I do? I don't have much of a budget. Some other things to think about here, if you do have a bit of a budget or you're able to do this, are just some more creative ways of recognizing people, providing additional time off. Maybe that is an afternoon after or the morning after a large event, just saying to log on a little bit early, for all the hard work that your team did during this process. It could be an event like a small staff lunch that you're hosting. Doesn't have to be anything expensive, can just be ordering out one day. In appreciation for your staff. Could also sometimes look like a gift card. If there is an ability to give a gift card to staff members at your organization, that's something you can explore kind of in recognition of their work. Or if there is that monetary bonus you're able to provide, that is certainly a part of recognition. That is certainly some way that folks are motivated and feel appreciated. But wanted to offer some other options too, that intangible kind of time off or staff lunch, other ideas there. Another way to be thinking about, that appreciation is thinking about what does that look like through a mission moment. So this could be someone who's really driven by impact. Are you connecting them with the impact through client communication or senior staff thanking them? So if a staff member communicates with you some gratitude, are you passing that on in recognition of the work that they're doing? So just thinking about how are we connecting it back to the mission specifically. And it isn't just similar to how we're thinking about donors, right? It's not just, hey, thanks for doing your job. It's due to you, someone said this, and we want to make sure that you know that you're really appreciated and valued on this team. And then finally, thinking about personal touches, this is really just integrating general appreciation into kind of our again, culture, our day-to-day. We care about our staff just past the output they're providing to the organization. So this could be like sending your staff members birthday cards, or writing a birthday card from the team that you're giving them on their birthday or their work anniversary. Just taking time annually to thank people outside of a specific initiative or an event that they're doing or a program they're hosting. It's just recognizing that, hey, we care about our staff, and we recognize it's your birthday or a milestone anniversary, and we want to make sure that that we appreciate you. The other thing I'll mention that's not here on screen is just, again, similar to kind of the mission moment or events kind of sharing out larger scale, is just thinking about, is there an opportunity to highlight your staff in a newsletter or a social media post? Doesn't have to be anything elaborate. It can be just a simple thanks, but just thinking about if there are there other opportunities for you to thank your staff on a scale that isn't just that personal relationship. It's a little bit larger, and you're communicating also with external folks that, hey, our staff matter, and I want to make sure you hear about the great work that they're doing. And so just thinking about that as another option there. So many of the previous approaches that I was talking about kind of speak again to that one-on-one recognition, but making that ingrained part of your organization really looks like taking time to model it ourselves, encouraging others to express thanks. We're all working together, and especially on small teams, we're often collaborating because we need to due to capacity, but recognizing when someone is doing this extra work is important. So tip number 3 here is really focused around having a plan. So what is our general strategy for showing appreciation over time? So it's outside of those kind of, I know that one-on-one, it's what my staff are motivated by. Maybe I have 3 or 4 ideas of things I could do to connect with them based on their motivation or just based on our capacity. Maybe I don't have much time, and so I'm just going to plan a staff appreciation event. This is really thinking about what is the strategy, how are we deciding what to do, and again, ingraining it into everything. So thinking about this, one is schedule those group events. So thinking about what events can you use to show your appreciation, excite staff, and build those personal connections. You want to try to plan 2 to 4 events a year. So just thinking about, are you going to do a group outing? Maybe it's a baseball game. Maybe it's a team lunch. Is it a breakfast? What are you going to do to appreciate staff on a scale that they can all kind of take a minute to take a break and feel that appreciation? 2 is just check-ins, making sure that appreciation is a theme in the majority of your staff check-ins, and encourage other managers to do the same. So thinking about how are you integrating that into thanking folks for getting the work done. The other thing here in your check-ins is keeping staff informed. One way to show that appreciation, recognition, and value is making sure that staff have the information that they need to do their work. So how do you keep your staff informed? How are you communicating with them? How are you making sure if there are, news updates, current events, logistical changes to the organization, that in your check-ins, you are making sure there's time spent because you value their input. You don't want to blindside them. You want them to have that info. So just as important as the actual thank you is the communication side of making sure your staff have what they need to do their work. To that vein, kind of that appreciation, thinking about how do we keep our staff informed of important updates. Another way to be thinking about this as you're planning and creating a strategy is thinking about what does public recognition look like. If you are recognizing publicly, I will caveat this by saying that you should ensure that your staff member know it's coming and are okay or are okay with public recognition. There are some folks on our teams that we may already be thinking of that if we recognize publicly, it would do the opposite of recognize them. It would not be something that they were comfortable with, and they wouldn't feel that thanks. So just thinking about, is there an ability to recognize them publicly? If so, let's do it over email, or we can do that at meetings. How are we thinking about this? The other thing I'll mention here with meetings, that could be kind of an internal public piece that folks might be okay with. One thing that we do at Spur Local, that we know some other organizations do, is we take time at every staff meeting for a couple minutes of gratitude. And it's free flowing. You do not have to participate in this. It is totally up to you. But we voice either things that our team is grateful for with each other, with our work, or it could be something outside the team, something we want to share that's just making us thankful that day. So we start each meeting with that gratitude and recognition before we get into business, before we start talking about what we need to accomplish. As you think about this, other ways to be creating that strategy, again, it's not only that large scale events, check-ins, public ways to recognize, but also thinking about how do we do this that it's part of the culture and it's not just us doing the thinking. So just getting the board or other senior staff involved to show things that it's not just from you. This could be using the example of thanking someone after they planned a gala, after the end of your campaign, or after or even with a campaign, but after your end of your event or campaign, maybe you're having a board member send a note of gratitude. Or maybe after that event, you're sending a note with specific shout outs to moments during the night that made you really thankful for different team members. So just taking some time to send that thanks. Once folks see it, oftentimes it's modeled, right? The next time that a program manager is wrapping a program, they might think back to that email they got from you and then do the same for their team. So just thinking about how do you get others involved, that it's not just you doing it here. And then finally, it kind of goes back to keeping staff informed. That, as we're thinking about appreciating staff, it's really, really important to listen to what staff want. If staff are looking for additional work support and we give them a lunch, they may not feel appreciated because that's not getting to what they want. And that doesn't mean we can't do those lunches. It might be a Band-Aid that we need as an organization, but it's really important to understand what do staff want and how do we keep them informed on that. So, are there benefits or support that staff have asked for? You want to ensure your staff have felt heard and that plans to achieve these, or if you are not able to move forward with certain things, are communicated. Examples here could be, at Spur Local, one thing we do are meeting-free Mondays, Monday mornings, rather. Our staff were feeling that every Monday morning we were catching up, we were having meetings, and it was a hard way to start the week. And we had the flexibility to kind of declare that for the most part, we will have no morning meetings on Mondays, but the rest of the week, it's fair game. And that was something that we had asked for because folks were feeling that was, a very hectic time of the week to get started. And if we had meetings, it just felt like you were one step behind all week. And we were able to provide that to staff and ensure that, people can make their own choices if they need to take an external meeting. But internal meetings are not happening on Monday mornings. So that was something that we heard and we provided. And that was recognition of staff and appreciation for the work and knowing that they know their work styles. This could also be like taking, a day, a month, or a day, a quarter to set aside and say there are going to be no meetings. We're all going to work on different strategy or moving forward our program planning or our data evaluation. So taking some time if staff don't feel like they have the time for that. Are there certain meetings that staff feel like don't need to be an hour? They can only be half an hour. That you can cut down on content, maybe do an email instead. Switching that up, that is recognition, right? That's appreciation that I understand what your time is valuable. I understand we don't need to do this. You don't need this. Let's go ahead and change things. It could also be more tangible, more kind of in line with what we always think of in terms of benefits, but could be like summer Fridays, could be a transportation benefit because the cost of Metro maybe goes up, maybe an option for hybrid working, professional development opportunities. The list goes on and on, but really important here is just what do staff want and are there ways that we can get that, because that in itself is a form of recognition and appreciation. Tip number 4 here is to use the review, your performance review process to making sure that folks feel appreciated and that their work matters. So, in terms of this, you're going to be using reviews on a normal basis. We are going to have these reviews, at least twice a year or at least annually at a minimum, that we're checking in and we're telling our staff that, hey, your work is valuable and we're going to take time to recognize what you've done and set goals for the future. It's not just going to be told down to you what you need to do next year, but we're going to work together on this because we appreciate and we recognize you. So thinking about how do we use that performance review process to both time to talk and provide feedback. So how are we, again, tying it back to impact, how are we providing that feedback because we care about their development, we care about their growth at the organization, and we're spending time using this process and giving it some formality there. As you think about it, the past, we're always saying thanks for good work, showing the impact of the work, talking about the value of the organization, and explaining, if we can, why it uniquely mattered. As we think about the future in a performance plan, it's thinking about how do we give those opportunities and communicate those opportunities with folks about new types of work or more responsibilities. It's not always, more work, but different types of work. Are they going to hold a new role? Will they be able to maybe manage an intern, get a certification? And more on the next slide, but the main thing here is to use the review and give time to the review in the way that a staff member deserves, not just something that we're doing to check a box. So we're thinking about how do we explain how the past work will set them up for the next year. We're getting them excited. We're promoting people and increasing salary when we're asking for more work, but we're really thinking about what happens next. How can we show someone that the value they bring to our organization, we see that, and we're going to continue to work with them to increase their value, work with them, to grow with them as a professional. And then finally, last slide here is really around getting them more involved. So this is kind of when I was talking a little bit more about giving more responsibility or new types of work. As we think about appreciation, there are some ways to get people more involved. It can be through more time. So we're giving staff more time to focus on some of their priorities. As they do more, we're in recognition of that, we're taking something off their plate. Maybe we are spending some time building out an intern program so we can take something off their plate because we can't necessarily hire. This again is also using, I mentioned time off. You could be thinking about using time off strategically to show that appreciation, making sure the time off is scheduled kind of organizationally after an event that they're hosting or planning. But just thinking about time there. If this is a volunteer you're working with, this is the option. This is not meant to be that a full-time staff member can volunteer their time, but rather if you're using this in the context of a full-time volunteer at your organization, is there an opportunity to give them more time? Is there something else they could be involved in if they're doing great work and they seem to want to be more involved? Outside of more time, another way that we can get them more involved and get them kind of feeling that recognition is giving more responsibility. So thinking about growing their role. Are we giving them more responsibility and then giving them enough support? That's important that we give them enough support to do that role. So helping them grow towards the next role. And then finally with staff, giving staff ability to step up and own certain items. Are we giving them more leadership? In appreciation for their work, sometimes giving that more leadership can look like the same amount of time that they're working on things, right? We're not necessarily giving a new project, but they have more autonomy. If anything, they might have more time because they're now owning a whole bucket of work versus just a piece that they had to collaborate and communicate on. So just thinking about, is this something new or existing, and what others can own? So thinking about what more leadership can they have as they grow at the organization. So just some questions to consider if you're thinking about this, or just kind of how can I help staff become more involved? Does my staff have opportunities to evolve their work over time? And how can I more engage staff while getting more done? So again, these are just some ways to be thinking about that appreciation outside that thank you, but and past kind of the culture of gratitude. But okay, I value our staff. I'm thinking about what they're asking for. I'm providing that. I'm keeping them informed. So I'm keeping them engaged because they know they can trust me as that leader. And then I'm making sure they know what's next. And I'm thinking critically about that. I'm not just trying to give them more work because they've done great work. I'm thinking about how can I give them more time to do that work? How can I give them more responsibility that allows them to grow a certain skill? Or how am I giving them more leadership so they're able to do things more efficiently and again, grow that skill? So just thinking through that a little bit differently for each staff member could be helpful as you're thinking about that recognition of staff. So finally, and I see one comment in here, so if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat now. But as we're looking at to-do list and kind of thinking about what comes next. If you're not sure where to start, one, I would just identify, actually start with number 4 here. What motivates your team members? Taking some time, jot it down for each of your team members, what motivates them, and then connecting that to an opportunity to thank them. You can always ask your staff, especially if you have larger staff, kind of more than 5 or 6 members, pull staff on what they want to see. Are you tied between certain things? Do you want to give, are they looking for a meeting-free Monday or something of that? And asking that. Would recommend planning a staff event during 2025, at least one this year. Again, it could be a really simple lunch, maybe gift cards if there are folks who aren't in the DC area that you can provide for them for lunch, thinking about planning at least one event. Integrating gratitude into your organizational culture by making time for it at meetings. Making sure it's not just you, other staff and board can help with the effort. So delegating thanks or asking a board chair or board member to send a note of gratitude to the team. And then finally, just piloting at least one new form of recognition this year. So thinking about what is one new thing that you can try to do, whether that's kind of looking at that more responsibility, more leadership, or more time, or a different way of thanking a staff member. All right, that is what I have. I see a question, so I'm going to look at this right here. If you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat and happy to answer them. I see. Okay, yes, great point here. Someone said asking for feedback about other staff in the context of involving the team in gratitude can be a double-edged sword in a small team. Notice it feels suspicious, almost like they're afraid to be sharing that or being called out. Certainly. So one thing we would recommend if you're thinking about that, definitely can feel that way, but it's really how we frame it, right? So thinking about if we are asking for feedback, having a couple questions that we're going to send to that team member ahead of time. So if I have a direct report and the executive director is going to that direct report to ask for feedback on myself, maybe there are questions like, what has this manager done to or this director done to make you feel supported? Do you have any feedback on your one-on-ones or your performance review on the performance review process from this person? Maybe it is around a process or an event. So we have directed questions, both specific to what are some great things they've done and where are some areas that you want them to spend more time or be more intentional about, so that there is that more structured way for feedback, both positive and negative, or positive and constructive rather, that they're sharing, and then you can frame that in the context of the meeting. But yeah, no, that's definitely, if we just kind of leave it open, can, especially if there are conflicts happening on the team, can be tough. But I would definitely recommend kind of tailoring it, sending the questions ahead of time, making sure also that the person who's going to be receiving the feedback knows the questions that are being asked, so that they have those. All right, we are over time. Thanks all for being here. Like I said, we will be sending out the slides following, and have a great rest of your afternoon.